guess, but it should become more obvious what that's about in just a few moments. I'll be sharing a link to the presentation at the end of the session, so that will contain all of the prompts that I show you, and it will contain links to everything that I show you in the presentation. So don't worry about trying to grab the links during the presentation. You don't have to make notes. I'll give you everything at the end. There's a slide here. That's me. I don't look anything like my profile picture on Zoom. These are some of my books, 4 of the books that I've written about AI, different aspects of AI. I'm actually currently working on a 5th one as well, which hopefully will be the last one, and then I can move on to something else. And if you want to sort of see the things that I do on social media, you can come back here later when you get the presentation and just click on those, and they will take you through to sort of different aspects of my social media, where I share things and try and keep people updated for free. Okay, so just moving on a bit. In this session, I just want to look at a little bit of background about AI and chatbots and what they are. And then I want to look at creating interactive learning experiences, and that's part of the conversational part that I'm referring to, and that will be focused on interactive learning experiences for students. And then I want to look a bit at AI mentoring for teacher development, and that's sort of more about how teachers can start having conversations with AI about the things that they do, and sort of developing their teaching through having conversation with AI. And then lastly, I'll just give you a few links to help you keep up to date with what's going on and what's changing. And I hope those will be useful. Okay, so my background in terms of AI was, because AI has been around for quite a long time. I know that lots of people think that it was just a kind of new thing that came from nowhere in 2022 when OpenAI created ChatGPT, but actually it's been around for quite a lot longer than that. In fact, chatbots and AI chatbots have been around since the 1960s. And were first developed as a way for people to have someone to talk to in terms of sort of getting therapy and talking about their problems. But it's taken a long time to sort of break onto the mainstream of ELT, but it has happened quite suddenly now. My first interaction with chatbots was actually back in 2001. I was teaching a group of students in Morocco who were mainly about 12 or 13 years old. They had a very good level of English considering their age, but they were very reluctant to interact with each other in English. They didn't really see the relevance. Why am I talking to someone in English when I can talk to them in French? It seemed very, there was a lot of peer pressure, and it seemed very unnatural to them. So I looked around for ways that they could actually practice their English with someone outside of the classroom. And remember, this was more than 20 years ago, back in 2001. So I went to a chat room to see if it would be okay to take my students to a chat room where they'd be able to interact with people in English. Of course, what I found when I got to the chat room was it was definitely not suitable for taking my 12-year-olds to. And but the other thing that I found is that I wasn't able to have any good conversations with people. The main thing people were saying was, "Hey, what's up, dude? Where are you from? Are you male or female?" And that was about it. And I didn't see any benefit in that for my students. But luckily at the time, a film had just been released. There was a film called Artificial Intelligence, AI, which was produced by Steven Spielberg, based on a script by Stanley Kubrick. And the film was actually based on the story of Pinocchio, and as you know, in the story of Pinocchio, he's a puppet who wants to be a real boy. But this was set in the future, and the character of Pinocchio was played by a young boy who was a robot, but he wanted to be real, and he wanted to have his mother to love him. And it was a very interesting film. But what was really useful in it for me was that it had a website that promoted it. it. And on the website, there was a chat bot. It was a simple plain white page, and it just had a little field that you could type in, and you could chat to the character from the film. So what I did was I took my students to this website and put them in the computer, and they each had a link to the website, and they started chatting with it, and the chatbot and asking it questions. And I was really surprised that they had some really good conversations, and they were asking really interesting questions, and also in some cases quite personal questions as well that they wouldn't really be able to ask a real person. And that was one of the things that amazed me and made me think that, this has real potential for language learning. You know, some of the things that really surprised me here now, that it would answer any questions for them. It didn't get bored or tired or impatient, regardless of what they asked it. And it had sort of no ego or self-consciousness. So it would answer questions absolutely honestly, and they were asking it things about love and about politics and even about religion and what it meant to be alive. And I thought that was marvelous, that they had some marvelous conversations. One of the problems with it, though, was it had a very short attention span. AI at that point you could ask it a question and it would answer. But if you tried to ask a follow-up question, it will have forgotten what the last question was. So then the conversation kind of broke down if you wanted to have a kind of in-depth conversation. And that was the point at which they started losing interest. And that's kind of what amazed me when I first started using ChatGPT, was that you could have those very long conversations with it. It could follow a conversational thread of up to 4,000 words, which my wife tells me is far more than I can, and she's probably right. It could also instigate responses and start asking questions, and it can be programmed to do specific tasks and used to power apps. So there are some really good things and real progress in those stages. If we just put this in the perspective of AI evolution and where things are and where things are going, because I think this often causes there's a lot of hysteria about AI and a lot of misunderstanding about it. If we go back to my original chatbot, we're probably that I did with my students in 2001. That was probably around the first stage of AI. It was reactive AI. You could sort of ask it a question, it would answer. Ask it a question, it would answer. So it would react to a prompt, to a stimulus. Now with ChatGPT, we're more at the limited memory AI, and so it can respond. You can follow a longer conversation with it and things like that. So we're probably at stage two. The next stage, or one of the next stages that many companies are working on, is what's called the theory of mind AI, where it can actually understand you much more, understand how you're feeling, with you maybe through scanning your facial responses and things like that. And that will be a big step forward, but that hasn't happened yet. And also the one that brings the most paranoia, I guess, is this last step forward, the self-aware AI, where we have these sort of futuristic films about robots walking around who look exactly like people. And I think, and who are going to take away all our jobs. And I think that is, that's still quite a long way off. It's not impossible, but it's still a long way off, I think. So just sort of putting things in perspective in terms of where we are. Okay, I've got a question for you, and that's the wrong question. My question for you is, uh, if you're using AI at the moment, how are you using it? What are you using it to do? Could you type that into the chat just to let me know? What are you using AI for at present? If you're not using AI, you can type in "I'm not using AI," and it doesn't matter. But I think lots of people are already, so it'd be good to know how you're using it. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to type in there. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of pretty much what I expected. Mostly, most AI use at the moment is at the level where you're getting it to do stuff for you, and that's great. Nothing wrong with it. Getting it to plan a lesson for you, create a test for you, help you do some research. All those kinds of things, lots of things like that. Okay, get it to mark an essay for you. Great. You tell it to do something, it does something for you. What I'd like to look at is sort of a different way of prompting AI, and maybe a way that's sort of more interactive and involves actual interaction with the AI. So what I want to do first is sort of look at how we can create interactive learning experiences for our students. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't do yet, I don't know, maybe some of you do, is actually speaking to AI and talking and using voice. A lot of the things we type in prompts and then get it to do stuff for us. And that's great. But I think it's worth remembering that we can interact with it, we can speak with it, and we can have conversations with it. And I think that's worth bearing in mind. Things like ChatGPT, they have a free app that you can use on your phone. DeepSeek now is I think available on the iPhone if it hasn't been removed yet. Also, you can you get a plugin to use it on your laptop as well. I use a Chrome plugin called GPT Master's Voice, and that's something that enables you to chat with your chatbot of choice. This is actually an example of a conversation that I had with it. And I actually went to ChatGPT, and I had, using this plugin, I asked it to give me feedback on my pronunciation. So it said it was willing to help. That's what it says here. You can have a look at this later. And then I read this text to it about, please call Stella and ask her to bring these things to me. And so I read a short text to it and got it to analyze my pronunciation, and then it gave me feedback, which was very handy. It's a strange text, but it's the one that I used because it has all of the sounds of the English language in it. And so it's a good way to sort of get to do sort of pronunciation diagnosis with students and see what sounds they're having problems with. It will, as you can see at the bottom, there's a little colored toolbar here once you've installed it, and that enables you to choose the languages, choose the voice that it replies to you in, and those sort of things. So that you can be enabled to use voice with it, even if you're working on your laptop. It doesn't have to be a mobile app to get voice. And even if you're on a mobile app that doesn't have voice, most phones now have voice recognition, so it's worth thinking about that. So you can actually start chatting to it, and we can get students to start chatting to it. And this is one of the first things I'd like to show you. It's a way to get students interacting with AI chatbots and having conversations with them. And this one's this is a prompt that enables you to program things like ChatGPT to become your student's role play partner. What I've got here, there's a prompt template here. So if you want to copy and paste this later on, you can then adapt it to any kind of interaction or role play that you want your students to have. I've put in act as, this is for ChatGPT. So you decide what you want ChatGPT to be, and you give it a role. You tell it the place and context, and you tell it the student's role. And then you can add rules. It's always a good idea to add a few rules if you can. So you can add rules about the language level, how you want it to introduce itself, and how it would start. And so as an example, this is an example of a role play that I designed for it's a restaurant role play. So I've written the prompt so that ChatGPT, or it could be any AI though, becomes a waiter in a sushi restaurant. And once you've written your prompt, you can give it to your students, and they can copy it into whatever AI chatbot they use, and it should work for them. I'll make this bigger so you can see what's going on. So look, I've asked it there to be act as a waiter in the sushi restaurant. The student, it has to be the customer. I've told it to be polite and concise, take turns to speak, and I've recommended B1 as a level. And so, if I could listen, and students can listen to this too, they can just uh, click the button to hear it if they want to. But the AI has introduced itself. It says, hello, my name is June. I'll be your waiter for today. How can I help you? So then the student can do whatever you do when you go into a restaurant. You say, can I have a table for two, please? So I'm being polite there. Of course, follow me. Here's your table. Would you like a menu? I could be a difficult customer if I want to and say, sorry, I don't like this table. Can I have one by the window? So I'm being a bit awkward. No problem. Let me check. Yes, we have a table by the window. Please follow me. Here you go. Is this table okay? I'll be a really difficult customer and I'll say, no, it's too drafty. See how they react to that. I understand. Let me find a more comfortable spot for you. How about this table? It's way away from the draft, but still has a nice view. Would this be okay? Yes. Can I see the menu now? Okay. And so great, here's the menu. Would you like any recommendations? And so you see, I can have what seems like a very natural and authentic sort of interaction and conversation. And students could be using this through voice. This is absolutely free practice. I know we get students to do lots of role plays in the classroom. Often they're very scripted or they're very controlled practice, but this is absolutely free practice. And each student would be having a different conversation and getting different responses based on what they input and how they react. If you want them to do this, you can get them to do it at home and practice and then get them to share a link with you. What's great about ChatGPT is it has this link sharing thing, so it will generate a link to the interaction and you can create a link and then share it with someone. So once that link's created, they can send it to you and you'll see what the conversation was they had. You could build materials around this and yeah, it does. And you can sort of or analyze it or look for mistakes. You could also tell students at the end of the interaction to ask GPT for feedback on the conversation and give them advice about how to improve their part. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do for students. I've sort of integrated this into my own lessons, and particularly business lessons, and sort of to try to build them into a sequence. And this is something from a business lesson that I developed for students. And what it was to help them develop their business networking skills. So I designed a role play prompt, but I also added a persona to it. So I gave it a background, and here you can see this is what the prompt looks like. You can download this prompt later, but there's the first part of my prompt, which is very much like the role play one, but this one I've given it a character as well. So I've written a profile for the AI, and it has to follow and become this person. So I've given them a kind of complete business profile. When I use this in the lesson, students also have the profile and they can research the profile first, so that when they meet this person, the role play is they're meeting this person at a conference and they have to interact with them and try and get a meeting to promote their new company. That's their kind of goal. And so they can study the background and then they can sort of try and network with this person when they arrive at the conference. The interesting thing, and the bit that they don't know, is that the prompt also contains some blocking. So she's been designed so that she avoids taking a meeting with them. So they can't just go up to her and say, "Hey, you're Annette Peacock, aren't you? I'd love to. Sorry, Annette Locke, aren't you? I'd love to have a meeting with you. How about it?" Because she's been designed to kind of avoid that and say no and defer. So they really have to work at networking with her and sort of build a relationship with there. And that's, I think, a great way to sort of promote sort of much more realistic interactions with AI bots and sort of builds student skills. And of course, they can work on that independently. And I should just grab that. And so it's quite a big prompt, as you can see. But once you get it, you can try it out. Just copy and paste it. Go to ChatGPT or something similar, enter it, and then she's just said hello. Isn't really helping me out much. So I say, are you Annette Locke? Yes, that's me. And you are? Nice to meet you, Nick. Are you enjoying the conference? Okay, so we start and build this conversation, and she's not really doing that much to help me. So, the student has to really work at it. One thing that I have found sort of sometimes if you don't put that in is that the chatbot does all the work and they make it too easy for students. So having that blocking can make it that much more challenging. So that's a way we can sort of implement that. The other thing that you can give them is just give them your students this simple prompt afterwards, and so it it then transfers the AI bot back into a teacher who analyzes your interaction and gives you feedback. So this, I think, is really useful as well because it not only gives them feedback on the language they use, but it also gives them feedback on their ability to network and how well they did at networking with this person. So that's a great way to sort of again build up some autonomy because once students have this prompt, they can start using it and start getting feedback. Okay, and if you want to try this out later, there's a kind of overall prompt template that you can try for writing role plays. So when you write your role play, describe the situation, tell the AI what it will react as, give it locational information, and then you can do things like this and adding rules. So you can decide on the register whether it's polite or informal. You can add any blocking. So in the case of my prompt, it was sort of insisting that she didn't want to take a meeting. You can put language level in. Make sure you tell it about turn taking and appropriacy. And at the end, you can also add a profile, and give it that profile or persona. Okay, so you can try that out and try and build one with your students. The other thing that I've done for students to build conversation is actually building personas. So giving ChatGPT a persona and getting them to interview it. And I think this is a good way to actually build empathy with the kinds of people that our students may never meet, and that's a kind of good way to break down prejudices as well. Let's see. So I developed this persona based around the image, and this was for a school in London, and the persona was someone who's Syrian who escaped Syria on a small boat, came to England. She speaks English. She was an English teacher in her country. She wants to be able to send money back to her parents. So I've given her a complete background and. That would be kind of similar to maybe somebody who was a refugee would have. And then students can actually interact with her and ask her questions, and she answers in a very kind of authentic way. And I think that's a really useful thing to have to give to students, to get them interacting with people who are maybe very different from themselves. And I think that's a powerful tool for building empathy. So that, I think that's another good thing we can do. There's some advice here on how to write a persona and the different things that you can do. So have a read that afterwards, and if you want to try building a persona and getting your AI chatbot to take on that persona, then give that a try. But I think it's a very interesting way of developing conversation and developing empathy skills to be able to sort of program ChatGPT to be someone rather than just ChatGPT or generic AI chatbot. Make it into the person that you want it to be. So those are a few of the ideas that I had for interaction with students. I'll pass on this one, but you can try it out later and maybe get a surprise. Okay, doesn't have to be ChatGPT for it. We'll work on a free version. All of the prompts that I've developed work on free versions. Okay, the other thing that I want to look at is sort of AI for professional development mentoring, which I think is something that sort of often falls by the wayside for many of us, particularly if you're sort of working, if you're working from home, you're working alone, or you're working where you don't have a staff room or lots of contact with other teachers. And I think it's a good idea to try that. Um, so guided reflection. I mean, I've got a question for you now to ask you to answer in the chat, and wait for the whole question before you answer. I'd like to know if you keep a teaching journal for your reflections. Do you keep one? If you don't, do you think you should keep one or do one, but never get round to it? Or do you think they're rubbish? Answer whatever you want. So, do you do it? Do you think you should do it, but you don't? Or do you think they're rubbish? Okay, so yeah, that's the a kind of bit like me. A lot of us sort of think, yeah, I'm going to keep a journal, and then sort of we never do. And I was wondering about the reasons for that, and I think in a lot of ways, a lot of us fail to keep them because we kind of you start doing it and then you don't really it's just you and a piece of paper, and you don't really sort of feel the benefit of it, or well, who's going to check it anyway? Am I going to go back and read that? But we can actually use ChatGPT as a mentor to help us reflect and to start building that journal. And one great way, I don't know if you journal keepers, whether you have a specific structure or you use a sort of specific procedure, but there is one called Gibbs reflective cycle. Of course, there are lots of others, but this is kind of a nice one. And Gibbs reflective cycle acts like this. So you have 6 stages, and you describe the situation that you've been in, you describe how you felt about it, you evaluate the experience, you analyze it, you draw conclusions, and then you write an action plan of it. So for me, I think that's a really good way to structure a journal, because you're not only venting what you feel and thinking about it, but you're also building an action plan based on the way you've analyzed the situation. So what I did to make this all a bit more interesting was I wrote a prompt, and it's a very simple prompt that can build this into a conversation that you have with your AI chatbot. So I've asked it as to act as a teacher educator and guide me through the process of reflecting using Gibbs reflective cycle. And I've told it to take one step at a time, ask questions, and wait for my reply before proceeding. So it can do that, and then at the end, it should be able to help me create an action plan. So if I go to ChatGPT, or you could go to some other AI, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT, you type it in, and what it will do is it will start walking me through that process of Gibbs reflective cycle. So it says, great, I'll make it a bit smaller so we can all see it. So it says, great, let's work through problem solving with Gibbs reflective cycle. So description, to begin, you can describe recent teaching related situation that you encountered. Try to provide, and again, it really does help if you provide as much detail as possible. And again, don't forget that you could be doing this with your voice. So it could be a spoken interaction for those of you who get tired of writing. So I'll just sort of make something up quickly. One of my students refused to participate in the lesson today. So that can be my problem. Really, it needs more detail than that, but we haven't got time for that. So thank you for sharing. Now let's explore your emotions in that moment. How did you feel when the student refused to participate? What were your initial thoughts or reactions? Did your feelings change? So, it's helping to guide me about my feelings. So I got a bit angry. Okay, so I'll just make up something quick. Okay, let's take a step back and evaluate. So it asked me some questions to help me reflect again. And so in this way, I won't go through the whole thing, but at the end of it, I can ask it to help me create an action plan based on our joint analysis of what has happened. And, for me, that makes this whole process of reflection and journaling much more real and much more helpful. Okay, I might not do it every day after every lesson, but the fact that I'm doing it, I can come back to it a number of times and keep that in my history. And I can use that prompt over and over again, I think, can be really helpful for me in terms of structuring my reflection. Um, just in terms of the prompt, like I said, it's very easy. If you have a different, if you don't like Gibbs reflective cycle, and there are lots of others, when you get the prompts, just edit that bit out and put in the kind of reflective process that you would like it to use, and then you can use a different one instead. You could use a similar one like what's, so what, and then what, or something like that. There are lots of different ones you can try out. So I think that's a good way to sort of help guide our teacher reflection. Another handy thing, okay, another handy thing that we can do in terms of uh, teacher development is action research. And again, doing classroom research is great, but it can be quite a complex process. And if you don't have anyone to help you or to help you reflect, then often that isn't something that gets done, But there's a prompt here, again, which you can use with an AI chatbot, and it will help you to sort of devise and construct your own action research project. So it says, act as an educational advisor, help me to create an action research project to help deal with a problem or challenge I want to engage with in my classroom. Please walk me through the process, ask me questions, and wait for my answers before continuing. Okay, so again, just by doing that will make that sort of more of an interactive process. You can paste it in, and then it will start to walk me through the process of devising my action research project. So it says, first, step one, identify the problem or challenge. What specific issue in your classroom would you like to explore or improve? It could be related to student engagement, speaking out. So it gives some suggestions. What challenge do you want to focus on? So it could say something like, developing my students' use of AI. Okay, so great. Now it takes to the next step, clarifying the focus. So consider these questions to refine your focus. What aspects of AI do you want students to develop? Okay, so it gives you some things to think of. And then you answer again, and it takes you to the next level. So, using something like this, you can really start to think through the whole process of creating your action research project. I mean, I guess the old way and the simple way is to sort of go to ChatGPT or whatever AI you use and just type in, I want to do an action research project on developing speaking, develop one for me. And then it does it for you. And it will do that. It will produce a whole action research project for you based on one prompt. But by having this interaction with it, working through those stages, it not only kind of helps you to develop something that will be really specific to you and your students and really targeted, but it also helps the teacher who's using that prompt to understand the processes involved in creating action research. It's taking you through that steps. So you're not just getting your action research project and plan, you're developing a better understanding of how to create action research. And I think this is sort of one of the important things that we can do and that we can model for our students in terms of how we use AI. Because if we're continually showing them how to just get it to create something, okay, write my lesson plan for me, okay, you get the lesson plan, but you don't learn how to do it. And I think that's something that, especially with more recently qualified teachers teacher training, it's important to learn how to do that. So, I think it's worth trying to take a step back and change the way you use prompts and change the ways you use AI so that it doesn't do the work for you, but it helps to guide you through the process of doing the work. And I think in that way you can learn more and learn much better. I know I'm running really kind of short on time in terms of Q&A now. Another thing that you can do with it, again, there's a prompt here. You can try it later. You can use it to help guide you through the process of writing a SMART plan or developing SMART goals. For any of you who don't know what SMART plans or SMART goals are, they're kind of specific and measurable plans that can help you plan how to develop your teaching. So it's great to have a kind of SMART plan about how you're going to move your teaching forward in the future. But this sort of helps to make that specific, relevant, and time-bound and measurable, so that you don't set unrealistic goals, or at least that you do things that you can achieve and you can show that you've achieved them. So if you want to try creating a SMART plan, grab that prompt later. Probably what you might have noticed from the prompts that I've shown you, or you might not, but all of these interactive prompts for teacher development have a specific structure, and they can be edited so that you can get them to walk you through any process. And this is what the structure looks like. So the first part of it starts with act as. And so you ask it to act as something. It could be act as a teacher mentor, act as an expert in neuro-linguistic programming, or whatever you want it to be. But adding that act as part of the beginning is really useful, because it tells the AI what field of knowledge you want it to draw on. So instead of drawing on everything that's out there in its large language model and everything that it's ever analyzed, you kind of start to limit that down to things that are relevant to your the field of knowledge you want. It's also important to say, guide me through the process of. So then you add what process you want to walk through, whether it's help me produce a career plan, a CV, a lesson plan, do teacher reflection, do action research. Tell it the process you want it to guide you through. Be sure to tell it to ask you guiding questions. And tell it how you want it to help you, whether you want to produce something at the end. And this one's really important. It's wait for my answer before asking the next question. If you don't ask it to wait for the answer, what happens is it just does a whole long spiel of questions for you, and you have to work through 20 questions. It's better if you do it and you interact with it through one question at a time. You can also add some rules to it. So you could tell it what level, if you want it to use a specific language level, or whether you want it to be formal or informal, or whether you want it to produce a summary at the end. It's good to get it, any interaction you've had with it, you can ask it to produce a summary for you at the end, and that can be really helpful. I've been noticing there are lots of comments in the chat as we go through things like asking about which versions of ChatGPT are free, which are they not. There's been some disagreement with that. Just to reassure you, these prompts should work in pretty much any AI chatbot, whichever one you use. It doesn't have to be ChatGPT, and all of them have worked for me in the free version of ChatGPT. So it really shouldn't be an issue. Okay, in terms of keeping up to date, just the last few things. If you want to keep up to date with AI and educational technology, I've put an image here that links to a newsletter that I publish once a month, which has things like articles and tools in it. It's free. You can sign up to it if you have a LinkedIn profile just by going here. And you can also sort of check out if you want to, you can check out the past editions. There are 24 past editions there. If you just want to sort of look at articles and read articles related to AI and educational technology, I curate a platform here where I add different articles as I find them. Most of them these days are connected with AI and education. So if you want to check that out, you can. If you're more of the practical type and you're more interested in tools, then I curate a collection of AI and educational technology related tools here. I've been doing this for about 15 years, so there's thousands of them there now that go back for years, but you can search through them, and you can subscribe so you get notifications of when the most recent ones come up. So that's sort of 3 ways that I can help you to keep up to date, and none of them will cost you anything. You don't have to pay for any of those. You can just subscribe to them. Okay, and last thing, just a few minutes. If anybody wants to ask some questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. In terms of while people are thinking about questions, there's the QR code for my presentation here, which has all the prompts in, and I'll also pass in a link to the presentation just into the chat now, but that might disappear quite quickly. I've just put in the link to the chat there. So either scan it with the QR code, get the link. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. All of the prompts are in there, all of the links are in there. So hopefully you can use that and maybe try a different approach to prompting that becomes more dialogic with AI rather than just telling it what you want it to do. You can sort of learn something from it much more effectively that way, I think. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Thank you very much, and happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thanks, Nick, for this wonderful talk. We really benefited a lot from it. Let me just pick some questions from our attendees, and I'll start with a question by Riham Sayed. What are the best AI free websites to generate animated videos?
Animated videos. It really depends on what kind of animated videos you want. I think AI is still quite limited in terms of what it can produce in terms of video. Like if you just sort of want to write a script and produce a video, most of the videos it produces are very short. So if you want something for free, you're talking about just sort of a 30-second video, which isn't very much. But there are lots of them. I think if you go to my Tools for Teachers site, I won't sort of try and pull any off the top of my head, and I wouldn't like to say which is best. But if you come here and have a look, you should be able to find a few there and try a few out. I mean, one of the best ones or one of the ones that's being talked about most within the video making industry is one called Runway, which is very popular and does very kind of high stylized video. And that's very impressive. But Google has also recently released one, and that's likely to improve quite quickly as well. So try those out. But producing video animation is still quite early days and very expensive to do. So hard to get for free.
Okay, moving to Ron. So what are your questions?
Well, there was a lot of good questions there in the question box, and I had to really go through a lot of them. You started with that first one that I saw right away. But, Nick, I think that it's really important to go back to a key word that, you keep mentioning through your talk here, and that's writing prompts, prompt engineering, uh, and my question is, how important is it for teachers to learn what a good prompt is? And can't teachers just ask AI to help them write prompts?
You can ask AI to help you write a prompt, but you kind of have to understand what's possible in order to be able to get it to do that well, you know. And so, I think it is important, at least at the moment, it's quite important to be able to sort of write those prompts and understand what the potential is and what it can potentially do. Because, some of the prompts that I've seen produced by people who really understand good prompting have been enabled me to do some amazing things. If you go through the presentation, there's one that I didn't show, which is one on Harry Potter. And what it does is it drops the student into the Harry Potter book and redesigns the story around them, around their interaction with it. And I wouldn't know to ask it to produce that. So, you need to know what the potential is. And it really helps to sort of have that knowledge of prompting. And then you can ask AI to help you with your prompt and help refine them. But if you go to AI and ask, create a prompt for me that enables me to produce a lesson plan, it'll be just like the same as
Yeah,
going to AI and
exactly.
saying, produce a lesson plan. It's not that great.
But I always tell teachers that I work with is that if you really want to write a good prompt, you have to use sort of that backward design, instructional design approach, and
Yeah,
you got to know what you want. What do you want it to,
yeah,
what do you want AI, or what do you want that lesson plan to, what's the outcome of it? How
yeah,
is it going to end? And that's that backward design thing. But I think prompting and learning how to prompt is really important. This is,
yeah,
I think, a big mistake because teachers get into that transactional question and answer, and that might actually be a waste of time when you're trying to get a lesson, created
mhm,
there. So I learned that very quickly in the beginning. You talked about, you, like I said, you mentioned prompting so much, and I just wanted to add that I use it in the classroom to teach language. Uh, and we talk about, well, let's create a lesson about, and we give a topic, in the business English class, and something that we know we have to cover because it's in the textbook, it's on the syllabus, and I have to stay with the syllabus. But, I sort of let the students, in this negotiated syllabus thing going on, let's create this class about this topic that we're going to have to cover, and tell them what these are the things that we're going to have to cover. This is the things the lesson has to have, but let's create it. And they're using language and they're doing it right there
yeah,
live and the classroom, and that's language learning too. But they feel that they're really part of that lesson because they're the ones that are creating it. And I think
yeah.
I know as a teacher what has to be done. And it gives them such a great feeling. It's like learner efficacy, and they feel that they're really part of their own learning process. So we can use AI in the classroom to get the students to create a class for themselves and learning how to create prompts and do that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I think it's very important to teach students how to create prompts anyway, because that's the way to step them away from this sort of
yeah,
just telling, okay, telling ChatGPT, oh, write my assignment for me, do my homework for me. Instead,
Exactly.
they can tell it, okay, this is my homework assignment. Walk me through the processes of doing it. And, that it can be their guide then to help them do it better and to help them learn how to understand how to do it. So if, for example, the homework assignment is a 5-paragraph essay about, I don't know, racism or something like that, and they go to it, it can walk them through that process of the thinking behind what you have to do to produce that essay, because the thinking behind it is becoming the most important thing. It's easy to get AI to produce the essay for you, but the thinking behind it and developing the way you think about these things and how you think through the process that's the really important thing. And I think that's really key to what we can learn from ChatGPT, or sorry, from AI. And I think that refers back as well to one of the questions. There was a question about students cheating and plagiarism. I think cheating is a big issue, but I think what we need to do is make sure that the tasks and assignments we design are geared to help them learn through cheating or cheat more intelligently, or so it takes them through that process. They're not based on the product, but they're based on the thinking. Okay, you've produced this essay, this 5-paragraph essay. What was the thinking? What processes did you go through to produce it? And that I think is what we need to develop with our students, those sort of process thinking, like you say, instructional design, backward design, and those kinds of things are the skills they're going to need in the future.
Again, that, goes to the thing that, we're going to be talking about a topic that needs to be covered in business English. I do ask this as well. Let's prompt it and ask it, what are the 20 things that we need to know about this topic? And it'll give us a list of the 20 things. And could you create a list of maybe 50 vocabulary words that are related to that topic? And then say, okay, we got some vocabulary words here. Let's see what that is. And then I tell them, let's print that out, but then turn all the technology off and let's write something about it with your pen and paper, old fashioned, instead of, getting them to have AI to write that article or essay for them, for me, because I have to grade those. Nik, I want to thank you very much. I think I speak for the whole Educast International crowd here and our listeners for taking the time to come and be part of our conference. And we look forward to having you next year. So, Nik, one more time, if you could just put that link again in the chat box for our listeners to your internet site where the presentation can be found.
Okay. I'll just hang on. I put the wrong link in. I'll just grab it and put it in for you.